they did want to join us. So again, welcome to today's work group section for the NTEC Students and Youth with Complex Support Needs. Give me 1 second to get the next slide up. If you can, and Ken, why don't we just go ahead and you can just unmute, let us know who's here in the room. If you could just say your name and what state, kind of where you're working, that would be great, because it's a small enough group. That would be great. So if you want to start, Bill, with yourself, and then if you want to just call on somebody else, we'll just move through.
Good morning, everyone. Bill Freeman, New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education, and I work in the area of transition. Let's hear from Amy.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Szymanski. I am with the Ohio Department of Education's Office for Exceptional Children, also in the area of transition, and I'm going to call on my colleague, Alex.
Hi, good morning. Alex Corwin from OCALI, which is Ohio Center for Autism and Low Incidence, in our Lifespan Transition Center. And I will send it over to Nancy.
It's my neighbor to the east. So I'm Nancy Heinrich. I am with the state of Indiana. I'm a youth vocational rehabilitation counselor. I work with pre-EPS in 9 counties in southern Indiana. And let's see, I will call on Jackie.
You're muted.
There we go.
There you go, Jackie.
For whatever reason, wouldn't unmute for me.
Frozen.
Yeah, here we go. Jackie Lister, and I work with the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network.
There we go.
And I, along with a colleague, lead the work that we do around secondary transition here in Pennsylvania. Oh, I got to call on somebody. Let's see who hasn't had a turn yet. Did we hear from Bill?
Yeah, we did. So I'm just going to go ahead. Nancy? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I already went.
You already went? How about Paige then?
Good morning, Paige Rose from Nebraska VR. I'm Program Director for Evaluation and Community Integration.
Great. And I'll help move us along. Christy?
Good morning, Christy Hegebusch, Arizona Department of Education, Autism and Low Incidence Specialist.
Great. How about Steve?
Good morning, Steve Morris from West Bay Collaborative. I'm the Regional Transition Coordinator.
And where is that? Where is West Bay?
We're in Rhode Island.
Okay, great. Welcome. Christy?
Thank you.
I already went, Michael.
Oh, you did? Okay, sorry.
Lauren
on my
is-
hand, on my big screen.
Good morning. I'm Ann Ladd. I'm a Family Engagement Specialist in the Division for Special Education at the Georgia Department of Education.
Okay, and then I think the only other person may be Mary Jackson. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Jackson. I am the Transition Resource Manager with Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services. So I'm with Iowa General VR.
Great, thank you. And I think that is everyone. Did I miss anyone? All righty. So again, thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate that. Wanted to just remind folks that today's PowerPoint, as well as our past work group sessions, can be found on the NTAC Yes LMS site. So let me just pull that up real quickly. If you go to ntac.yeslms.com, you're brought to this page. This is a site that we use for this past year's Capacity Building Virtual Institute. So that information is there, but it's also where we have this work group's information and our community of practice information, as well as the peer network information. When you go to the work group page, it will take you here. You go down and the work group meetings are there. And you'll see the past meetings we had. And if you click on today's, the PowerPoint should appear that we're using. Not that there's a ton of information, but there's some information in that. We'll also be adding the recording for today's session as well as notes. And I know Brenda is diligently taking notes for us. So thank you, Brenda, for doing that. We have a couple more meetings coming up. We are going to only meet once in November and once in December because of the upcoming holidays and folks' schedules. But the next meeting after today is November 11th, and then we're meeting again on December 9th for the work group. We did, and those of you that were involved, and just kind of as a recap, we worked on the topic of assessment and kind of looking at that and the process of assessment for students with complex support needs. That is evolving into a short course. A number of you have met in the last couple of weeks regarding the possibility of engaging teams in that short course that we're looking at starting in January. If your state has not connected with us and you're still interested, please, I guess, send me an email. Or you could just type into the chat that you are interested, and I know Mary's on the call, and we can get in touch with you. We're still working out some of the logistics of that. We've met with about 7 states, I guess. Mary and
yeah,
Brenda.
I think that's about right. 7 or 8 states.
So we're still kind of refining what's going to make the most sense for the short course. I think one of the things that we're hearing back is for teachers and for VR counselors, this continues to be quite a tough year as far as timing and doing professional development. So we're looking at ways to best accommodate that in looking at the short course and the weeks or the units that we're putting together. So that's kind of something that we are aware of and working on. But if you are interested in the short course as a possibility for your state, and you haven't met with Stephanie, Brenda, Mary, and myself yet as a small group, go ahead and type in the chat and we'll get in contact with you about how state teams could get involved with that work. So let us know. When we met the last work group meeting, so it was last month, we talked to everyone about how what topics or what areas of concerns you had around engaging students with complex support needs. And predominantly that discussion led to us to really look at how to best, and it's what's on the screen, this interagency collaboration service delivery for students. In other words, how are we coordinating what we're doing at the state level, all right, so between vocational rehabilitation, special education, intellectual developmental disabilities, mental behavioral health, and the other state level entities that we're working with or organizations, how's that happening? But then how is this happening at the community local level? And then I think probably the stronger area of concern or interest was how are we doing this at the student level? In other words, when that student is in school, how is education reaching out to VR, IDDD, the other support agencies and coordinating services for that student so they can be most successful when they graduate? And what and how is that being delivered? As a result of that, at our last meeting that we had for the community practice a couple of weeks ago, we talked about different models, and DJ presented a bit about the integrated resource team model. And it spoke a little bit about that and kind of the focus of that being a very student centered approach. What we'd like to today is to talk to, so I'm going to stop for a second. This concept then of what we're doing with interagency collaborative team models and collaboration was something then that NTAC, the collaborative, talked about at a much larger level, not just looking at students with complex support needs, but looking at for all students and youth with disabilities that we're assisting in transitioning. So a group came together and we're looking at this in a very broad sense about what are the fundamental components of looking at collaboration. What do you have to have in place for systems alignment, engagement at those 3 levels: state, community, local level, and then the student level? So what would like you to do is help us along in this process and talk a little bit about what's working in your state or your local area, in talking about at the state level, the community, local level, and at the student level, and not only just what is working well, but why you think that's working. And I'm just going to pause for a minute and let DJ or Brenda jump in with any other comments before we open this up for your discussion. So DJ or Brenda, I'm not sure if you have anything to add.
I really don't, Michael. I think you've provided a really good kind of synopsis, of kind of here's where we are at this point. And honestly, in the past, we've had maybe some speakers or some presenters, or we've had a topic where we've talked with you all. There is so much great information that you all have and what you're doing. We just wanted this entire conversation today, right, Michael, to really be around from you all, having an opportunity for you all to tell us what is working at each of those levels. And then we'll, talk about what some of those gaps are as well. But we just really want you all to kind of drive this conversation and us to listen to you all today.
Great, thanks. And DJ, any thoughts from your end, just from all the work that you have done, especially around the integrated resource team model?
No, I think you all covered it pretty well. So, and I would just add on that in addition to us hearing about what you all are doing, it's always at least I always appreciated when I was in a state hearing what other states were doing. So hopefully you can also take advantage of that relative to these conversations today about learning about what your peers are doing across the country.
So why don't we, to kind of break this down a little bit, why don't we start with the state level and looking at, from your lens in the states that you're in, what do you think is working best around this collaboration, interagency piece, maybe tools or resources that you're using or things that you found very effective to engage the various state partners in working towards supporting students with complex support needs? And just unmute and jump in and have that conversation. And I can pick on some states that I know are doing some stuff, but I'll let you self-select first.
I'll speak, and this may be more basic than what you're looking for, but we do have our state collaborative, and which we've kind of expanded this year. We always go to the INTAC conference, but we did add some additional partners, and so we are having some really great conversations at the state level. I think we have the right people at the table, and this just from the, and I'll speak to the family engagement piece because that's my ball there. But we did just host an event with our transition GVRA transition coordinator for a family forum, which we're going to do quarterly, a virtual family forum. So trying to kind of get this information. So I guess I'm talking about this level and the state level and the family level. So there's other things going on in between that I can't really speak to as well, but that's what I can report on. So,
and the collaborative, and is that a set group that meets at the state level? Is it in like, who are the partners involved in that?
Yeah, we've got, we added higher ed this year. So we have higher ed. We have, of course, our state transition folks in education. Elise James is typically here in this group. I'm the family engagement component. We have our GVRA, Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Partners. So those transition folks, several people from there. We have our AT folks, both from education and also in our AT, I can't think their name, but the AT people in the state. So they're at the table with us. Let's see, I feel like I'm leaving out a few people. We have about 15 folks at the table. And traditionally it's been about 6 or 7 or 8, the number of people we would always bring to the INTAC conference. But so we've really done a good job, I think, of trying to think who else needs to be in the conversation. I feel like I'm missing some people, but anyway, we do have a good team where we deposit our all of our information. We also have our compliance transition people from education. And we meet, I think, monthly. Seems like it's very regular. It seems like it's always happening, but I think it's once a month.
And is the focus students with complex support needs, or is it really all students with disabilities in the state, or how do you?
It's all students, but we've been doing a lot around students with more complex needs.
Gotcha. And then you had mentioned at the local level, or I guess the family level, and does that look different? And I know in Georgia you have, I guess, a number of folks in your same position as family. I'm going to mess up the name. Family work people.
We have we have a project called the Parent Mentor Partnership, which our Department of Education, it's an initiative of the Department of Education. So we actually give allocations to districts to hire a family member to work in the school district, representing families and connecting families, home, school, and community. So doing those pieces, a lot of them end up, well, they do all kinds of things, a whole lifespan, but transition ends up being a big focus because there's such a critical need for that. So yeah, we have about close to 90 parent mentors across the state. So we have a broad net, a network, and just a net for disseminating and sharing information. So that's really helpful of getting that information down to the family. And I think I said it at the last community of practice, it's the families that are there for the long haul. And so we want to be student-centered, and we want to be person-centered, and have self-determination, but we know that family is going to be always in the background as those transitions continue to happen throughout the course of someone's life. So we want families to be on board and involved. So I think we do a pretty good job. That's an area that we do a good job with in Georgia. And then I think part of this collaboration over the years, working with GVRA and the people that are in place now are folks that we've been working with through all Intact for many years as well. So we have some good, solid rapport amongst our state level folks. So
nice. We're gonna stay at the state level, but we'll come back to it when we get to the next two levels. But thank you for that. Other states looking at state level collaboration and some of the things you found very effective.
I can speak up a little bit from Pennsylvania. It is so. The focus on this has certainly been something we've been wanting to do, but the drive has been coming from a parent group that is really saying we need to do better work in Pennsylvania to support students with complex needs. So we are fortunate to have the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, and we are, provide professional learning and development for people across the state on behalf of the Department of Education. But we are fortunate to have a family group that is really that we hire people who are family consultants across our state. And so I'm going to drop some of their work that they've been doing into the chat. It takes you to our webpage, but to their particular page where it's family resources for students with complex learning needs. And it's a beautiful page, and we've had a lot of support from our families in the work that has been done there on behalf of families. And so I think, agreeing that is the place that families are going to be with their children as they become adults for a lifetime. So that work that the family group has been doing, we in our transition initiative or group have been working alongside them to support this work. And they are, along with at the state level, a part of our community of practice, which has been around for many, many moons. Michael knows and is aware of that, and it's changed and looked different over the years. But this year, we have really been focusing in on what do families need who are really supporting youth and young adults with complex needs. So we have two strands that we've been working on as part of this state level group. And so this is going cross-agency outside of education into Office of Developmental Programs, Office of Long-Term Living, higher education. We have our folks in mental health are part of this work as well. And we've been working on benefits planning because we feel like that in the past, we've identified that as a gap, and that families, it's so complex and families don't know how to do that. So a group has been working, they did a full out survey about benefits planning to people to find out what they did know and what they didn't know. And so we're creating a resource document that is kind of in its final stages before publication. And then the other half of that was around person-driven planning. So person-centered planning has been a part of what we've done here in Pennsylvania using LifeWorks. It's been a very successful process here in Pennsylvania for a number of years out of our Office of Developmental Programs. And we realized the need to be thinking more about that person-driven lens of things. So there's another work group out of that same community of practice that's collaborating to create a resource around person-driven planning and helping families and schools better connect with, and other agencies better connect with person-driven planning. We also have done some collaborative webinar series together. We have a group called Families to the Max, which is also, you'll see them on that same page that I gave you. They came out of, that group was developed out of a state personnel development grant about 8 years ago, and they've continued to grow. And that Families to the Max group is specifically family driven, and they on their own and with our support as well, but have created training such as presuming competence that they will then deliver across the state as needed. Yeah, so that's kind of it's that collaboration through the community of practice that I think is really at the state level has been continuing to move forward, and we're happy to say that it is really a collaboration.
Great, thanks, Jackie. And hopefully folks are picking up on some of these key points that I think we've just heard from both Ann and Jackie, and some of the topical areas they've been talking about that are being addressed around this population of students with complex support needs at the state level. Other states, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, hi, I can talk about New Jersey.
Thanks.
So we had a system change in our developmental disabilities system about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. We had a state division of developmental disabilities that used to serve individuals from birth to old age. And about 8 years ago, they chose to change to only serving individuals aged 21 and older. And for young folks with developmental disabilities, they were placed to be served in under the system of the Division of Children and Families. And that really changed the dynamic and the level of service, frankly, for those individuals. And it hasn't been a smooth transition, I have to say. It's been a struggle for that new entity to understand the needs of this population and to ramp up services as needed. So we're still struggling with that change after 8 years, and I think it's been difficult. And the adult DD system has acknowledged now that they need to do more in relation to the transition into their system. And so that's been a recent development where they've sort of indicated that they want to get more involved in transition issues. We just haven't, we started to get going at the state level just prior to COVID, and then COVID hit and things kind of fell apart. So at a state level, I think we're still struggling.
And is that group still together, or has it been, do you kind of, no?
Yeah, we haven't really heard anything in the last 18 months or so.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thanks for, and hopefully, Bill, some of this comment, it will be helpful in getting something possibly underway in New Jersey, because I know this is an area you've been really trying to work with in the state from both the VR and education sides.
Right.
Thanks. Other states?
Michael,
Yep.
Yeah, this is Lauren. I can
Hey, Lauren.
kind of share what I apologize, I was a couple minutes late. So just kind of sharing, similar in Arizona, we're doing sort of a community of practice, Arizona community of practice on transition. So it's a monthly meeting that we have, and we have about, I'd say about 20 different stakeholders that are at the table. So it's fun to hear that other states are doing similar work, but we have found we're pretty proud of this community of practice in that it brings different stakeholders together throughout the state. Something that we do as well is we have some educators, some representatives that are working at the schools as a part of that community of practice. We also have a youth representative, a youth ambassador who's a part of that group. And I apologize, I'm talking low because we moved buildings and we have other team members that are really close proximity. So I'm trying to talk quietly. So we found that that's been really helpful. It's really kind of neat. I'm a little bit newer to the group, so it's really neat to kind of see what the group has done historically, and having that youth ambassador at the table is a really cool way that the group has established sort of meeting the needs at that student level. So he kind of advises. He has a disability, and he sort of advises as to things that have worked for him throughout his transition ages or throughout his transition years. So it's pretty neat. So just wanted to share that.
Great, thank you. Other states, so go ahead. Alex, I see you. I got that camera off, so go ahead. You or Amy?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about Ohio, and I know Amy Szymanski, one of my colleagues here in Ohio, can join me too. But we at Ocali work specifically with kind of those with complex needs and low incident disabilities. We have a couple different projects with our state developmental disability agency, as well as sitting on the Employment First Task Force, but one of them being specific outreach to our county board schools. We still have 44 kind of separate county board run schools, and these are our county boards of developmental disabilities that really serve the most complex students and youth. Some schools only have 8, 10, 12 students. Some have much more than that in kind of more our urban districts or urban areas. But we've been working with those schools on just exactly this, about working with partner agencies, doing some resource mapping, understanding transition assessment, and still working with these students in a very intentional way that's aligned with standards and other kind of evidence-based practices and curriculum. And then we have our transition innovation work, which is working with our county board of DD service and support administration. I apologize, my dog is wanting to take a huge drink right now. But we've been working with these service coordinators, these SSA departments here in Ohio, which are county-based, about multi-system planning, collaborative service development, knowing their community partners, engaging in local interagency agreements, talking about specific students, but really coming together to understand each other, their roles and responsibilities, facilitating teams, and finding some joint mission vision statements that they put together there locally, and then work on kind of SMART goals and action planning, and using some data to really help improve services and outcomes there locally, with that target again being those students that qualify for the county board system that are going to be those with more complex needs. And then I'm not sure if Amy has anything else to add potentially.
Sure. I just wanted to mention that we do at the state level really rely heavily on Alex and his team at Ocali to provide a lot of the professional development and resource development around service delivery for students with complex needs. We do have a consultant who has a focus on low incidence. So I try to keep her in the loop and involved as much as possible with the transition age youth as well. I'm just actually thinking maybe she might be a really good candidate to be on this work group, and definitely to look at the module that you're thinking of, the short course. So I think that there are some gaps in the sense that we can be doing a lot more, and just need to continue to think of ways to collaborate and bring this work to the forefront.
Yeah, and I didn't mention any gaps, but I think working with a lot of these professionals, whether it's the school administrators in the county board systems or the service and support administrators, a lot of the time the feedback we get inherently, even before we start talking to them, is, these resources, these trainings, these things aren't for us. We are serving these students that are really complex, and they feel like a lot of tools and resources that are out there require a level of modification just to be able to use it with their students. And they feel like they are, because when we start talking about kind of the 1% and the alternate assessment and all of those students, that not a lot of tools and resources aren't directed and developed specifically for them. So I think anything that can be created in this space that, is picture-based and, works directly with students for complex needs, I think is going to be really well received.
Thanks. Thank you for that. And I think that is one of the things that we continue to hear also. It's like, but you don't understand my kid or my population and what we're doing. So I appreciate that. Other folks at state level, things that are working in your state that you think have been really effective? I know there's a couple of states we still haven't heard from that are on the call.
Hey, this is Daniel from. Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, all right. Okay, I'll be brief. So speaking.
No, you don't have to be. You're good. And Daniel kind of kick in. We're good with time. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel. So speaking for Indiana, at the state level, I report to Jonathan Krasik up in the state office. And so he chairs a transition advisory council, and that pulls together the major players around the state. Now, that body does not specifically address students with complex needs, but it does include those students in the representation on the advisory council. So of course, it's comprised of voc rehab, the workforce development is on there, and they also oversee the program called JAG, Jobs for America's Graduates, which about 30% of those kids in the JAG program statewide have an IEP. And then there's also InSource, which is our parent support group, and the Governor's Council for People with Disabilities, the ARC, the Department of Health is on there because they provide a lot of support services to kids with complex needs. Hands in Autism, there's another parent group called About Special Kids. And then we have a group called BOSMA, which provides a lot of support services for students with vision disabilities. And then the Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing is also part of that advisory council. And so the 8 of us that work as the youth counselors around the state, we all attend those meetings and help to disseminate the information down to the local level. So, but then also on part of the agency that voc rehab is under in Indiana is the Bureau of Developmental and Disability Services, and that's the agency that handles the Medicaid waiver programs. So in the area where I work, our office is in the same office with the BEAD staff, so we're able to work together on a case-by-case basis. And then the other thing that's statewide is Indiana University hosts the transition cadres throughout the state, and there's regional cadres, and those are chaired by people with local education agencies, and so the teachers of record in the public school system are really driving the transition cadres in our development of work products that can be used statewide to serve students with complex needs. For example, one thing that the cadre that I sit on is we've been working on for students who are nonverbal, we've been working on a pictorial job career assessment tool that would serve those students that teachers could use. So
do the cadres work on different projects, or and then you share them across?
Yes. Well, each year there's a theme that IU establishes to those work products, And some of them have been related to the transition portfolios for kids with the certificate of completion tracks. And that was a work product a year ago. And so each cadre has its own project, but related to the state theme.
Nice. And are those housed somewhere, Nancy? Like, I don't know, is it the Indiana University website or state website?
Yeah.
Or
I will go grab the website and I'll put it in the chat.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
And Daniel.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Hey, this is Daniel from Virginia. And just sort of to give you an overview, our CBVI team has been doing a lot of work around we did some assessment last year statewide to see where different agencies kind of were with transition assessment. That's kind of been our focus for a while, and really trying to get an idea of who's doing what and where, and sort of getting a broad view of kind of the understanding of age appropriate transition assessment. And kind of what we found was people may rate themselves higher than with comfort level and understanding, especially for students with more complex support needs. And so over the past couple of months / year, we've really focused on providing some resources. And I think kind of the purpose behind it being, let's create a web of resources rather than several tangents of resources, so we can be a little more insular and guiding people to the things they need. So using the taxonomy for transition programming to put some Virginia specific resources out there to families, students, and schools. Another thing we've got going for students specifically with more complex support needs is a pilot project with several school divisions looking at utilizing our applied studies curriculum map, which is a resource for teachers and families and schools to identify skills needed for students to be successful in employment and independent living in post-secondary education, and really helping to shape up what those programs look like for kids who are not earning our standard diploma. So most of these kids, we're really focusing in on those kids who are participating in our alternate assessment and looking at how programs and classrooms supporting those students can really tie in what's available in their community and how to tie instruction back to the classroom so they're supporting those community experiences. And so we've got 6 divisions now that are really working through developing sort of these instructional frameworks and unit plans that really, from a division's perspective, really focus in on what community supports are available and making sure those interagency connections are being made. And from a student perspective, making sure that there's that authentic assessment piece for them as they're in the community to really address and assess what their needs are, and providing strong instruction with evidence-based practices to support those students to increase post-secondary outcomes, because we know those outcomes for our kids earning the applied studies diploma are not good. And so we're really trying to make those connections for them and strengthen that and provide some models for other divisions to build those programs out.
And how's it being, I guess, implemented statewide as you're doing that, Daniel?
Can you repeat the question?
So I know it could diverse state, Virginia being very large. How are you looking at making sure it gets kind of across the state and what you're looking at?
That pilot program, we specifically looked at divisions with different needs, and we chose them based on the number of kids who were earning the applied studies diploma. Gotcha. Sort of a higher number there and a lower results for indicator 14 for being engaged. Is that 14? Being engaged after they leave school. So high level, low level. Okay, cool. And geographically diverse. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Thanks.
Can I ask a question before we go on?
Yep, Bill, you're up. Yep.
Yeah. I've heard a couple of folks mention picture-based or picture assessments or non-reading tools, that kind of thing. And I know they've been around a really long time. It's nothing new to have that kind of thing. I also know that it's been somewhat controversial in its use, because some folks who do not read could also not understand what's going on in the pictures. So that's been my experience with students that I taught. We couldn't use pictures because the pictures wouldn't mean a whole lot to them. So I just wondered, how people were thinking about that.
Thanks, Bill, for that. And then I guess that would be the other question, which forms of those picture assessments are being used? And I know there have been a number that have come out that are more either with actual pictures or videos, short videos that go with those assessments. So I guess the question I throw back out, which of those assessments have you found effective and have they been effective?
I can share what Nebraska's using.
Sure, go ahead.
For years and years, we had the Reading Free, which has recently been updated, thank goodness. More recently, we've purchased the Pix, and thanks to COVID, those are now offered in a virtual format as well. Something that we provide guidance to our staff on is, if it's unclear, if the student understands what is going on with the assessment, just try to document as much as you can about their communication style. Just everybody communicates. And so we put together a guide, just how to go about doing that and try to figure out if the assessment can be deemed reliable or not. And then, of course, virtual job shadow is something that we've purchased, and our agency has completely embraced that platform. It's amazing for all levels of students.
Thanks, Paige. Mary?
Oh, yeah, I think just following up on that. I think, Bill, for the students you're thinking about, if they're not capable of understanding a picture, whether it's a line drawing or a photograph, probably the best way to gain information that you might need about career interests or considering post-school outcomes is to look at those who know them best. So bringing together the families and people who spend a lot of time with them to help you figure that out. So whether that's a person-centered planning meeting, or I'm thinking about that research from Oklahoma, you said that is preferences inventory, where you're interviewing others about the individual's preferences, and it includes a wider array of preferential behaviors than what we typically think about. So that's one that I always like to share. Probably, as we all know, the best way for individuals who can't explicitly tell you what their interests are is those experiences. So they have to be on the particular location, in that setting, on that job. So sampling and figuring it out from their behavior when they're in that environment is often the best approach. Is most paper and pencil assessments are not going to work for that group. So nothing new for you all, but just a reminder of how we might go forward with thinking about identifying their strengths and preferences.
Yeah, I would disagree, Mary. That's exactly the approach that we've historically taken, is situational assessment, trial work experiences, person-centered planning. That's been the approach. We haven't gone to use the use of formal tools typically with these individuals.
Yeah, and then I think the important thing for all of us to do is then systematically document what we've learned. So oftentimes I think it ends up being anecdotal, because educators may not have a sufficient amount of how do I record this? How do I do this in a way that is systematic in nature? So you can still do informal approaches in a systematic approach and make sure you're gathering that in a way that's meaningful.
This is Nancy. So yeah, I agree with, well, I'm glad you asked that question, Bill, because what I see is on the picture inventories is a lot of that's coming from the classroom teachers. They know their students best. It's never going to be a one size fits all. And it's like when I go into IEP meetings and the person guiding the meeting will ask the student, well, what do you need? Well, if the student doesn't know what's available, they don't know how do I know what I need? I don't know what's out there. So it's the same kind of analogy. If kids don't know what it's like to work in an office setting and they see a picture of 3 people huddled around a conference table wearing, business clothes, I mean, do they have a reference point for understanding that? So I totally get your concern and agree with it. So it's not a one size fits all.
Thank you. And Alex, I know you shared some of the things that Ohio has as far as, and it kind of gets at what Mary was talking about. If you just want to mention some of that documentation in the career discovery tools.
Yeah, I put the career discovery toolkit in there, and there's a couple different tools further down in there. There's kind of structured interview tools, just helping kind of codify and organize what we're going to ask and what we're going to document. But the situational observation tool, as well as the employment experience tools, are ones that we really help, promote for this group of students and for all students. Anytime you have an experience, we have a much more comprehensive vocational planning tool that I'll drop in the chat as well, that one of our local MAP teams came together with VR and school and county board DD came together and developed. That is really, really extensive, but also talks about a lot of really great things to document and capture and share with each other. But I think, yeah, to everyone's point, the picture assessments are something that's kind of easy for some educators to kind of get started with, but then we really push them to say, okay, that's great that they've indicated working with animals or offices or whatever, but now you need to get out there and you need to verify that. You need to get them in those experiences. You need to document how it goes, what they like about it. But a picture assessment in and of itself is not the answer or the tool that we're kind of working with.
Great, thank you. I think we may have heard from most folks about state level. I'm not sure.
Could I mention something real quick, Michael?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot about person-centered planning, and our DD agency in Nebraska has had multiple trainings the past couple years on that. But something new and exciting that has come together is a new task force on supported decision-making. And that's being spearheaded by Disability Rights Nebraska, the protection and advocacy group. It's comprised of the USED, the ARC, Department of Education, DD Agency, VR, Office of Public Guardian, Nebraska Bankers Association, just to name a few. It's a huge group. But we had a presentation from Jonathan Martinez, who is really an expert on supported decision-making, and we're really, really excited for that.
Thanks for sharing that. And I know there's been work. We actually were involved recently in looking at a guide on supported decision-making or guardianship, just to look at what some other states are doing. And there's a really nice resource. There was a funded center on supported decision-making. I don't have that link right handy, but I think that's a really key concept too, in looking at, especially working with students with complex support needs, because then that goes into, from the education lens anyway, looking at, I think, what we're doing instructionally with students along those lines. So thank you, Paige, for bringing that up. I think it's really excellent.
We also, I'm just going to jump in. I'm sorry.
Yep, no, you're good. Jump in. That's what it's for.
Yeah, and we've also done a lot of talk around supported decision making, and at our big fall kickoff conference, we did have a presentation from our protection and advocacy center on that, and then we also paired it on the next day. We had a session on transfer of rights and decision making options for adults. So it was well balanced, because we were able to give the continuum all the information that people need to make the decision that's right for for their family, because it's an interesting topic when you start talking about guardianship and that continuum, and what, you know, when you have the individual who's being self-determined, we want to make those decisions, and then families want to protect their individual person, and then some families have already taken those steps, and so you don't want to be judgmental. So it's an interesting conversation to navigate through, but I think we were able to do it very successfully, particularly kind of pairing those topics together and just presenting it that way. So it's an exciting movement, though, in my mind.
Yeah, great. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that. And I guess, and I don't know, Mary, did you have anything that you want to share from Iowa? Or it is Iowa, isn't it? Sorry.
Yes.
But,
No, you're right. It is Iowa.
Well, I knew it was an I state.
Yes. No, it's not the potato state. We are Iowa. We're the corn state or the Hawkeye state. But anyways, I did put this in chat, and this is not earth shattering by any means, but I think in Iowa, what we have found to be successful is having strong memorandum of agreements in place to support that interagency collaboration. So what we found is when we're going at the local level, kind of going into the weeds to figure out who is going to deliver which service to provide the supports for students. And this is all students to be successful and whatever that transition looks like. The biggest piece that we utilize is the memorandum of agreements that outlines at the state level what we've agreed upon for roles and responsibility, for funding pieces to help support those conversations at the local level. It also helps support cross trainings that we need to have happen, or making sure that there's an expectation that there is interagency collaboration occurring. So we have just found having those MOAs, and not just having them, but having a strong MOA has really supported as you start looking at community and local and student level efforts, that is something that's needing to be in place first.
Great, thank you. And I think the other thing that we're finding in states with the MOUs or whatever, there's all these various names, but basically there's interagency collaboration models, is one, that they exist, but then how they're going to be implemented and kind of drilling down, getting information out. I am going to kind of call out Jackie, because I know the last year the state of Pennsylvania was looking at their MOU agreement, but actually making it more functional. And I guess the importance in that. So Jackie, I don't know if you just want to mention some of that. And it was really families and youth and everyone involved with kind of getting out what the intent was.
It really has been a journey because, you know, everybody works differently. Then COVID happened, but the MOU really did help us focus in on what it is that it really is just an MOU between education and VR. That's the only, this is the MOU we've been working on, but it's comprehensive. And we have also created a number of toolkits to go along with that to support things being implemented at the local level, but, you know, also at the state level. The focus right now is the MOU is written, and the focus right now is how can we now make this something that we can deliverable in a digestible format to educators who are in the classrooms and at the IEP meetings. They're the ones that are sharing it with youth and young adults. They're the ones that are sharing it with families. So that's what we're in the process now of creating, are those toolkits that will help make it digestible and something that is relatable for those educators to be able to share out beyond that. And, you know, we've worked with NTAC to do this work. And we've had people, you know, our directors at the Bureau of Special Education and Office of Vocational Rehabilitation have been on that, as well as, you know, us worker bees who have been a part of that as well. So we're beginning to see, you know, that all come to fruition. It's been really close to a 2-year process to make that happen, but it's slowly but surely it's happening. Was there anything else you wanted me to highlight, Michael?
No, I think that's, and I guess this is the point that, and why I wanted Jackie to speak to this a little bit. It was, I think most states do, all states have these interagency agreements or memorandums of understanding, but to actually make them operational and to point back to, hey, this is what was agreed upon, this is what the legal requirements are, because I think that sometimes becomes a stumbling block in states with people saying, well, why the heck do I have to do this? And kind of pointing back to those effective practices and kind of reestablishing the whys of that and then looking at how all those activities that are going on can help deliver that. And Alex just asked, are curious if anyone has measurable goals within their MOUs or any support, any way of tracking progress.
And we do, I'll put the link to where all of this information is housed right now. The MOU in Pennsylvania does have, specific goals that are required to be done by this date, a training plan by this date. So we do have some measurable goals in that way. Now, when it comes to employment goals and such, they are not there, but there is another entity that's working on that. And that same work group is folded in to this.
Great. We only have a couple of minutes left. I don't know if anyone has any closing comments, and I realize we just got through talking about state level collaborations, but this was really a rich discussion, and really appreciate the information. It's going to help, I think, as we're looking at the work around students with complex support needs, but I think it also helps just in general as we're looking at more collaborative models with states. I did want to remind folks that our next work group session is in a couple of weeks on November 11th, where we'll be picking up this conversation. So hopefully you'll be able to join us. I will say that the makeup of the work group as well as the community practice does somewhat change from month to month, which is, it's great because I think we get different views, but if you're able to make these meetings, this is really rich discussion. And I know it's helpful for us at NTAC Collaborative, but hopefully you all are finding this beneficial in your obtaining information from everything that's being shared. We do have another community practice session on December 15th as well. So again, look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. If you have thoughts or questions that come up, please drop me an email. Make sure to get back to you. And we will follow up with those couple of states regarding the short course. And Mary, I'm not sure if you picked up on those. I think it was Ohio and I'm blanking on the other state that said they were interested.
Iowa.
Iowa. Thank you. We'll follow up with you all about that.
Oh, no. Yeah, great.
Oh, it's Veterans Day. And I'm seeing it's a state holiday, which some of you will not be around on November 11th. All right, let's look at that. Let me possibly look at the next, maybe we may change that then. We're going to make sure folks can actually participate in our next meeting. Let me look at the next Thursday, the November 18th. We may adjust this so to see if folks can do that date. So thanks for throwing that out there because it'll be lonely talking to a few, myself, I guess, on November 11th. So let's look at adjusting that. So I'll send out a note and we can look at changing that date. Thanks for letting us know that. All righty, folks, I think we are at the top of the hour. Thank you again for joining us. We will take the day's recording as well as the notes and what is in chat and add that into that Yes LMS site. So again, I'm going to stop recording. And